Hey everybody, you're watching Right Reason at the intersection of ethics, philosophy, and pop culture. Thanks for watching. This is episode number 13. Fun fact about number 13, that is so when Plato, the ancient philosopher, traveled through the ancient world, he left letters, not only the books he wrote, but letters about his experiences, and there are 13 letters of Plato that we have today. Let's get into the show. What are some of the questions that we all have today?
A user on Quora states, I want to quit my job and start my own business. Where do I start?
Yeah, that's a good question. Starting a business is a very in thing today. Like everybody seems to be starting a business or an entrepreneur on Instagram, selling T-shirts or hats or whatever. That's not really business per se. That's like just merchant trading. That's not really, anyone can do that. What really business means is sort of a large scale endeavor effort. And those are very, very difficult. Even small, even like just being self-employed often is fraught with risk and danger. But it's a lot more manageable. But when you're involving at least one other person that has to work with you, work for you, that brings with it so much more complexity of like knowing human nature, knowing empathy, knowing time management, like how do you motivate somebody, how do you inspire, how do you then be somebody that people will listen to, like what's the line between authority and tyranny. It's just it's such a complicated world. That's only dealing with employees. I'm not even mentioning merchandising, inventory, procurement. I'm not even mentioning accounting, profit and loss statements, balance sheets. It's plus like what is the business itself? What's the larger purpose, and what are you trying to make and build of yourself? It's the reason why starting a business is maybe the number one most complicated thing that a person can do today. And I said this yesterday to somebody. I said, so to start a business is more difficult than to pass a bar exam as a lawyer, or to pass the medical boards exam if you want to be a doctor. 95% of all businesses will fail, and no other profession has that kind of failure rate. So I would never set it as an ambition to start a business, because that's like saying, well, I want to most likely fail and spend all my money and be poor as a result. So I want to be very careful with that ambition and asking why, right? Why, what about it makes it worth the risk? It's this insane, enormous risk that's almost certain to fail. And how come it seems like all the people around you aren't failing? Because they are the ones with the labels in their profiles, and they're like walking around like they've made it. How come they are making it and you're not? So therefore, shouldn't they fail? And if they're not failing, maybe you'll make it as well. The reason for that is it's a mirage. So many people are out there posing as successful entrepreneurs, as businessmen, businesswomen. They have, the labels, the inspirational quote on their shirt. They're walking around with like a swagger. And I've met many of them, and I've known all of them eventually close down shop and go work for Bank of America. And it's just what happens. I've seen almost everybody that I've worked with close down shop and work for Capital One or Wawa or McDonald's or a hospital, just go and become a doctor instead. So the reason they're not failing is they're just using their money, their savings. They're just using their money to make the image of success, and then once the money runs out, they'll have to shut down. So I would say don't worry about other people and what the impression is from their end, how successful they seem to be and how much better in life they are than you. That's the pathway to a mistake. Looking at other people, at being envious, being greedy, and being jealous of their success, and as if they have it, then I have to get it too. They're going to fail, I guarantee you. Just worry about your own life. Worry about your own success. If you do have the skills of empathy and incredible, overwhelming motivation, that is almost superhuman. Ambition, time management, humility. If you have all those skills, I say give it a shot. And we can talk about how to start a business. What is it? What are the first steps? But maybe that's a question for another time. I would say, as an overall framework, starting a business is very risky. So I'd give it a second look, a third look, and even a fourth look before doing it.
What was the biggest missed opportunity for you while running your business?
Yeah, that's a great, I mean, I made all the mistakes that I talk about. I made all the mistakes. It's just that I had the circumstances that let me fail and overcome those mistakes, which may not always be there. What mistakes have I made that I shouldn't have, right? Is that the question?
Like one of the biggest missed opportunities.
Missed opportunities. That's a great question. I think, I don't know, I made all the right moves. Like, and I don't mean that I've done everything well, but I failed in the right way. I took the risks that maybe not always worked out in the best way. I think, so maybe that's what I'll say is my answer is here we go, I'll say this. When you're trying to build a business and you've taken the risk, you're going to take the 5% success rate move and try to make it work. The number one thing you have to have is people that will help you get there. Unless you want to be a solopreneur, like a contractor, just doing your own thing in an office or in your home or whatever. To have a team, even just one person, the difference between being one person and being two people is like being one person versus 1,000 people. Just having one more person changes so much, adds so much more complexity. So one mistake that I made early on is when I tried to grow the team, I didn't know, I knew so little, I knew nothing at all about business. It's almost insane how little I knew, and I still don't know many things, but I knew nothing at all. And so one of the mistakes I made was I didn't know how to hire people and where to hire them, and how does that even work? What does that mean? Especially when you have low cash flow in the beginning, you just don't know where to go. You just don't know where to find the people, and sort of in the culture you hear, people with big salaries, and you just can't afford that in the beginning, and you kind of crumble under the weight of that, and you say, well, I just can't have any employees because I can't afford even one, and I need one just to get started, just to get going, and I can't afford one, and it's like a vicious cycle that never lets you start. So I decided to short circuit that blockage. That was the right move. So what I did was I went to a staffing agency, and they were charging me an enormous amount of money they found me some employees who were okay, but they were so much more expensive than I could afford, that I could barely afford the one or two people that they found for me. It's when I transitioned from that frame of getting employees to saying, okay, how do I get them myself? How do I find a way and a pathway in the system to cut out the middleman and just to work with people directly, people that are looking to find work. Where are they? The ones that I need. I was looking for specific people, and they couldn't even feed me that profile because it's too complicated of an ask of a third party to give me something that's so only I even know what that means, right? So I tried to explain to them, this is what I'm looking for, and they're like, yeah, I don't know what that means. So they gave me these employees that weren't that great, and they didn't fit the profile of an employee that I'm looking for, and they charged an arm and a leg, and even 2 arms and 2 legs. So when I cut them out, I knew what I wanted, and I found a place to get the employees that I was looking for, and it cut out all the extra fat of having this third party agency taking a huge chunk of money, which let me pay more, and also because they were paying themselves a lot and they were leaving nothing to the employee because they were the processor of the payment. So I was able to pay more to the end person and to have more people. And once that got going, once you have 2, 3, 4, 5, now we're up to 11. That changes so much. It has people interacting, people communicating. You can delegate tasks. You can put your mind into a frame and let somebody else do something that you just can't do at the moment. It's just so valuable for the whole life cycle of the business, just to have one other person, 2 other people to get you going, and to find that those few first people is the most important thing, I think. on the way to success.
Who is the greatest entrepreneur ever and why?
Yeah, I think so. I think everybody knows that I love Gary Vee more than anything. He was my mentor, and he doesn't even know me, but he absolutely taught me everything about business. So I would force volunteer him, and he would love for me to say that. But I do want to push back a little bit against that. He's a great entrepreneur. He's not the greatest of all time. I think the greatest of all time were the industrialists that are now called the robber barons by people that are too envious to give them any other title. The Rockefeller, Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, Henry Ford. Henry Ford was incredible, as was Morgan, as was Rockefeller. And they are given a bad name today just because of how things went down back in that era 150 years ago. But as far as like pure business brilliance, there's no one that today, I mean, you could mention, so in today's era, in our lifetimes, it's Gary Vee, it's Elon Musk, it's Jeff Bezos, but you all know about those names. And it's also difficult to learn the lessons from them because they're still living. And so they still have a vested interest to not tell you the full story. You want to go to the person that is dead so that there's no downside to them telling you everything because they're dead and their self-esteem isn't at risk for mentioning a mistake to you. So like you can learn all the mistakes that J.P. Morgan made on his climb to the top, all the things he did well, all the things he did badly, and no one's gonna be bad or sad about those mistakes being learned. Whereas with Jeff Bezos, it feels like just a streak of success with no end, like he's infallible, like he's got the oracle of infallibility. But he's made mistakes, and when he retires, when he's dead, his children will tell the story of what the mistakes were, and then we can look back and see, was Jeff Bezos as great as J.P. Morgan? I'd say right now for me it's Morgan, Henry Ford, Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, Cornelius Vanderbilt, all the great men of that era that you can learn a lot. And what's also interesting about them is how individualistic they were, in the sense that today a lot of entrepreneurs and business people have a board of directors that sort of they have to deal with, and they have to tussle and debate and pull strings and have a power struggle with. Like with Steve Jobs, right? He was fired by his board from Apple, from the company he founded, which never happened to Vanderbilt or Ford, because they did not, to my understanding, they didn't really have a board to speak of. I'm sure it was a different time for business, a different sort of era of capitalism with different institutions of how things are done, just in general. So they didn't really have the same sort of understanding of shares. Maybe it's an oversimplification, but the sense I get is they basically ran the companies single-handedly. Right? And so what that means is they put a lot more responsibility on their shoulders. And so you could really trace the individual decisions, the personal foible, like Henry Ford had many personal foibles just as a man, many like issues. And you could see those playing out later in Ford Motor Company's life when his personal issues begin to appear more and more. Whereas if it's a board of directors, it sort of softens the impact of an individual person. It makes it safer to run a business, but also takes away all the risk taking, all the great initiatives that Elon Musk is maybe the only example today of like a great risk taker, an incredible builder, single-handedly, right? With Tesla, with SpaceX especially, Solar City and the Boring Company, et cetera, because he didn't have to wrestle with a board of directors that would hobble him. And if he made a mistake, it would destroy the company, and that would be on his shoulders. So like with Tesla, he's not doing that great because he's a little distracted, he doesn't know how to fix things, and there's a board of directors to also contend with. So in the older capitalist era, you can see the pure business mindset of you're on your own, you have 100,000 people that listen to you and respond to what you have to say. If you make a mistake, everybody gets fired, the company closes down. If you make a successful move, then you get to hire more, you get to make more impact. it's all up to each choice you make when you wake up in the morning, when you go to sleep, how much you eat, how much time you spend with your kids. Rockefeller didn't spend time with his children, and they didn't turn out too well, which is a lesson, a very sad lesson. The Rockefeller Foundation has not been a positive influence in our country. So that's the issue, is you can learn a lot from people that have passed on about what to do and especially what not to do. Is that it?
Yeah.
That's the wrap for episode number 13. Thank you all for watching. I hope this has been of value. We'll keep on doing this. We've been a little bit slacking with these just because of time and client work for our video team, but we'll get back into it. It's a great fun for me. I hope it's fun for you. Thanks for watching and tune in next time.